Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to our viewers from all around the world. I am honored to have John here with us for our next episode of Groundbreakers. John Metzger has been a veteran in the mining industry, and in the past few months that I've known him, I think his passion for mining and tailings is something that stands out. He's had a really diverse career. He's been at IDS, Grand Probe, and now he's got asset assurance monitoring, his own venture to really impact the mining industry and provide the value and help people really understand what monitoring is from different aspects of satellite monitoring, remote sensing, and also linking it with traditional instrumentation and monitoring. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, John. It's a pleasure to have you. And let's start by talking a bit about your experience, your career journey, what sparked your interest in the field, and what got you where you are today.
Thanks, Ridvik. It's great to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to share. And well, there's a lot of years there to go over, but yeah, like you mentioned, we've known each other just for a short time, but we have a lot of things in common. I think the passion, that your team shows in the family business, that's great, and that matches well with our perspective, though smaller. Um, we started looking at remote sensing data quite some time ago, back in like 1990. My first kind of project with Tulane University, supporting the State Department and what was called the Famine Early Warning System. So there we used satellite data to send reports out to field staff, get those back, and that aggregated information, those details we shared with organizations like the State Department, the NSA, CIA, and others. And that was all centered around food security. So it was impressed upon myself and those that we worked with, how important what we were doing was, communicating what others couldn't, with technologies that maybe not everyone understood, and we were learning ourselves. And, coming forward over the years, we had the benefit of working with a lot of people in the mining industry, where safety was number one and additional information was a close second, in that it supported operations and production, which in a mining operation is, key to good business. So safety is at the root of everything that we do. I think it's also something we share in common across our businesses, and the partners that we have, the community that we share online and on sites is really centered around safety. But I wouldn't say we're a safety company. I mean, it's at our core, but we're really data evangelists, if you will, getting information that just is still hard to come by, and sharing that out, wherever we can, on site, at the corporate level, and as a, responsible mining sector member, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's super, and I think you've started with technology you didn't really know, and you've taken it to a level, whether it was through radar with ideas or now even what you're doing with basic satellite data from Landsat and Sentinel-2, which are two satellites for viewers by NASA and Cortesat by ISRO that basically have archives of years and years of data on Earth is really something niche and something important. And over time, with more satellites being launched, more ability to compute data and understand data, I think the work that you're doing will impact the industry more and more as we go forward. So, tailings management, it's become a critical aspect of mining worldwide. So, do you want to discuss a bit about TIRI, STAR, radar, like what these technologies are for people who haven't heard about them before, and how they really help in the mining industry and safety?
Yeah, that's, you know, it's a challenge because tailings, for years, we spent a lot of years on mine sites supporting slope stability. Um, carrying that innovation out for ground probe in the mid 2000s, and then beyond that with IDS, across all global locations, slope stability and safety was at the core. And we'd meet tailings folks, and and we'd ride, in pickups with them, and we'd go out with them sometimes, on shared trips through the mine, and we heard their challenges, a lot of them environmentally based. And these structures were massive, right, with like huge rocks, building up the embankments in many cases. And it's hard to visualize from the ground, like the scope of what was going on. It just looked big. And as we started to move into satellite data, later, within the last, say, 5 to 8 years, focusing on that, that's when we saw the vision, right, that many people couldn't, and still don't, is that at scale, satellite data, that perspective, makes it affordable and accessible, to many. And we looked at what were the components of that people really needed to understand. And it was quite simple. Water. Water is necessary and the devil at the same time, right? For a mining operation. And too much water is not good, and not enough water is not good. Managing that is what many mining operations, really invest in, and it takes up a lot of resources and time. And what we saw across the tailings was with, pretty simple data, from Landsat, using near infrared and some of the shortwave infrared bands. We could see the differentiation across the TSF. And through our experience on mine sites, we understood where there was open water, where there was the tailings, the fines and the output from production in the solution, and then where there was beach. And we each day learned more about where what was good, and also where challenges were. And the satellite data allowed us to do that at scale, very affordably, and give us an archive, which is really the gold in monitoring information, is that you have an archive of regularly validatable data. And the Landsat
Yeah.
archive provides this going back almost 50 years. Sentinel, of course, from 2015 forward, and commercial, data also we can use in between. But there aren't really commercial products that do global coverage outside of the recent, Planet initiative for, nearly everyday updates. But we took those basic outputs, we created through a software that we found, from, the farming community in North Dakota. A company called SatShot had created this, environment decades ahead of its time, but also with a very, immediate need, and that was define differential information across fields. Well, we knew the satellite, the sensor didn't know what it was looking at, right? Whether it was a field, a parking lot, a TSF, you know, it didn't know. But what we found in our work with the software was we could create zoned information with numbers that we could equate to acreage or square hectareage, if you will, in different, units. And we could show the mine folks where, on an intramonthly basis, they had ponded water, how much that amount was in terms of aerial coverage, and then how that performed across seasons, across years, even decades. And when we started showing that to mining companies, the astute ones so far were like, wow, I
Yeah.
mean, like, how do you do that? And what we could very comfortably say was, well, the science has been done by scientists, and we are applying that science, that it comes from India in the opportunity of, LAS or Cartosat, that it comes from North America with Landsat, that it comes from Europe with, the Copernicus mission, and others in a smaller scale. These are invaluable resources to support better tailings and mine waste management. And that's where 90% of our effort is right now in growing that out and educating, as well as providing that service.
Yep. I think that beautifully sums it up that it's like countries and continents really providing data and for different communities, and it's how you use that data available. And I think another highlight was that whole layered approach where you're taking like, okay, checking a parameter, water, but also taking a multispectral, hyperspectral data from satellites, and you're getting an overall picture of a tailings facility. And I think what's key here is also you get historical data. So now with machine learning algorithms, and it's a time series, so you can really analyze and maybe predict, suggest what's happening in the future, but really know what's happened in the past as operations have worked out. And then you have all these different tools on ground like radar, like drones, like laser scanners, and also instrumentation, sensors, and really like software to support this and give asset owners and mine owners, project managers, engineers that comfort and assurance of safety from actual data they can understand. Because like there's tons of data, but you got to bring it together and make them feel like, okay, this is what's going on. So I think that was a pretty interesting way to bring it up. And for our viewers, I think TIRI, TSF management was something new and something they're familiar with is INSAR, I guess, because INSAR is the buzzword for satellite monitoring. So do you want to branch in a bit onto INSAR and how that complements the kind of data you get on satellites as well?
Sure. Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
exactly the truth. Is that it's complementing. We're not a threat to another business, right? We're like the jacket, to your wardrobe or your ensemble, right? INSAR is as, in my view, vital, but it's still a challenge to see it, in use everywhere. Uh, there's some difficulties with the type and availability of sensors, but it's no excuse for not using the open access resource of Sentinel-1. Um, our data is a direct complement. In fact, it's actually always amazing when you get a group together who has an issue and you start layering the different types of data. We even also produce a thermal layer we call TIRI, which is based on Landsat 8 and 9 thermal infrared sensor data. It's a global resource. Again, it's at a different resolution, but we can, in one swoop, if you will, right? We can include environmental, um, precipitation, weather data, displacement data from INSAR. And when you see where the water goes or is, and subsequent or recurring displacements, the room usually gets quiet, right? And the engineers, they look at each other, a little bit, and you can see they're thinking, and they're wondering a couple things. One is, we got to do this now and forever, and why didn't we do this before, right? And we don't want any of that to be a limit. We can create historical reviews, even with INSAR data. We can go back many years with different devices, and you can recreate events like Samarco, Cadia, Brumadinho, Mount Poly, if you really want to. Monitoring is very different from observation. And I think we're at least, if not the top of the hill, near the top in saying that, Earth observation is limited in its utility to provide applied science. It's observations that occur once, maybe daily, probably weekly, maybe monthly, where you can gather information. And what we do is monitoring, even if it's monthly, looking at time series, as you mentioned, from INSAR, from our tailings and impoundments reflectance index TIRI, from other sources as a group together. And you start to see now these patterns, right? Which goes back to one of our core themes at asset assurance monitoring. It's risk reduction monitoring. So what that means is, you agree you have a risk. and you apply the science from in situ instruments, piezo's, inclinometers, what have you, ground radar if you have it, a satellite if you have it, TIRI if you have it, right? At less than $10,000 a year for intramonthly reports from TIRI, there's no reason a mine can't start there and apply the other tools. Or if you have a historic program, even with ground instruments, overlaying these together in an opportunity like you offer with Proqio, that's where we're moving to now with rapidity, a rapid pace, because these visualizations together, they empower the mine staff, the stakeholders, the management, even local community members, showing them that they're okay instead of only when they're at risk. This can greatly change the dynamic of the value and the social political, if you will, presence of mining, which in today's world we know is quite a significant issue and something that we need to engage directly. And the data is our friend in that regard.
Yeah. And I like how you said that, like somewhat like validate the data, right? Like today we can put in our in-place inclinometers and extensometers, correlate the data with INSAR data. You can get your TIRI data correlated with environmental sensors, water level
Exactly.
sensors, water quality sensors. And I think that combination of ground and remote really needs to come together, because you're looking at historical, you're looking at monthly, weekly, and I think in the next 18 months, daily updates from satellite data that give you that
Exactly.
whole picture. And the in situ ground-based instruments give you that real time, every hour, every minute, every second, if you require data on critical factors. And what you said, Proqio is literally bringing in data no matter what it is, whether it's your radar, whether it's your satellite, whether it's your inclinometer, putting it all into one. It's like the engine of a Ferrari for a mine owner, and really giving them insights. And that's what they want. They don't care if the piezometer is giving them an insight, or if Landsat is giving them an insight. I think what they really want is the fact of the matter that what's the issue and how do we mitigate the risk? And if there's no issue, we know that there's no issue and we can sleep with a peace of mind. And I think that's the value that monitoring would really add to these mine owners. So I think
No,
going
no,
on,
definitely,
yeah, you can go ahead.
definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just wanted to add,
Yeah.
the other component at the corporate level where this comes in real consideration is with regard to the social license to operate, SLO, as it might be referred to, or environment, social and governance, ESG. So these are um, aspects and concerns across a mining operation that impact different players, if you will, or different
Yeah.
participants within the mining community, but globally. And
Yeah.
ironically, it's the data, right, that we're
Yeah.
providing, that your company is providing through their instruments and their platforms. It's this data that gives support and relevance to where you want to be in the world, right? Whether it's being greener, whether it's being more socially inclined or observant, whether it's looking at diversity across the environment landscape. That data, that's what is our core. And I think now is a special time where these are all affordable. In past, it was quite challenging. You could do many of the things that we do, but maybe the cost was 10, even maybe 100 times. And it was difficult to budget for. But this is all changed, and a real comprehensive program like we're working to put together with the Encardio Right and Proqio teams, this is going to be a great value we see, and I believe we'll see it in the marketplace, that folks will come to and look on as a real benefit to their operation.
Yep. And I think no one can do it alone. And today, people have the same
No,
mission. We want to build missionaries with different people, because we need the radars, we need the hyperspectral, we need the ESG, we need the local community, we need the mine owners to all be like, okay, this is our one mission and we're doing it together as a team. And I think that's what we're really trying to also do. with different people across the world and take the message forward. So I think let's move on a bit onto hyperspectral and multispectral because when I was talking about this episode with our communications team, they're like, wait, what is hyperspectral? What is multispectral? And I feel like these are things that I understand because I'm working with these technologies, but they're niche. They're very niche. And they're used in not that much in civil or mining. So do you want to explain a bit about them and how they really can help a mine site or even a civil project?
Sure. I mean, we're learning also, right, as that environment matures. I mean, hyperspectral data has been available for decades at a very coarse level, right? The Aster sensor and others. And again, with regard to affordability, there's new space companies or new space companies with smaller satellites that are being launched more affordably that are looking at thermal and the hyperspectral realm um, for opportunities. Here again, what we see is that the promise is there. The practice is a little more challenging in that the expectation that's raised in the sector is fairly high, but the deliverability of results is less so. That being said, we have a combination of, I think, knowledge and practical tools that render it simple, right? So I'll just use one example in the tailings genre, if you will. So ammonium hydroxide, right, is a chemical compound that is a component of output from, we'll say, a gold mine's milling process, and that's uh, there in the output that goes into the tailings pond. Much of that water is then recycled through the mine's water management system. Um, and we've had people ask us like, well, can you see ammonium hydroxide? Can you see this element or that element? Well, with multispectral and shortwave infrared, and not really. You might be able to create a proxy, right? So we know it's in water, and if there's a lot of water here, then there's probably more ammonium hydroxide. But how much is really there? So this is kind of a day-to-day, week-by-week effort right now that we're working on with different companies who have the sensors. And what's interesting is they, in some cases, offer 800 bands, right,
Yeah,
in the hyperspectral spectrum. And they're trying to find a solution need for every one of them, right? Because
yeah,
that's what they perceive as the business. Ironically, it's probably less that. It's maybe a subset, let's say 5, maybe 10, even 25 of them, specifically for a certain compound, maybe cyanide, sulfuric acid. These are all common in the mining community and as effluent. So can we look at those? So we're working on that right now. I know we can do it. We've done trials. And what was interesting is, we passed on a AOI for a target in Canada and looking at a TSF, and we told them what we were looking for. And they came back with data and they were very sad. Like, they had great hopes. I think that they
yeah,
would see, like 90% ammonium hydroxide in the data. They said, well, there's nothing there. And I said, well, let's look at that a little closer, right? And it's actually, there was something there. And this was only 1 or 2 acquisitions. So we kind of crossed over a number of issues. One, you have to have serial data. So it's not that you take one hyperspectral measurement in January and
yeah,
that is a recipe. That's just, like the baking soda, right?
yeah,
Now you have to have the water, the flour, the egg, and that is, February, March, April, May, if you will, right? Together, looking at how this presence of or concentration of where that particular element is and how long it's present and in what potential volume it is. This is where they want to get, but it's not a one-time affair. But that you can see it once means you can see it all the time. So
yeah,
when we went back to them with that, they felt better, But now they understood that they have to go back and get this same data from the same area on a continuing basis. Well, that's something that they didn't really consider before, right? So some of the constellations that are planned, some of the satellites that are available, they don't cover the whole Earth at all time. They're like project or area based. They're looking for a maximum dollar for covering what they can. And I think we can entertain that, but historically, that's been a challenging point because where you need it, when you need it, you don't know. But we know that you need to cover the Earth. So we're trying to impress upon, federal actors, NASA, USGS, and others, how this is applied as a snapshot. That's nice, but the power of serial data, right? That they've had experience with for years, going back to probably the pharaohs, right? In taking measurements to build the pyramids and whatnot. Those serial data points are vital. So I think it's coming. I think it's going to be 5 years to see it really become part and parcel of monitoring. But we have everything we need now to make that possible. We just need affordable and repeat visit acquisitions from the instruments that are available.
Yep. I think I like how you said 5 years ahead and we're preparing for it. And I think that's something that I love looking at, that for us, from just being a sensor manufacturer and data logging manufacturer, we've grown to use really, really interesting technologies. Like right now in a project, we're using a laser scanner that has like a 2 kilometer accuracy. And now we're also using maybe radar and ferrometry, which is not that common in civil. And we're
Right.
also looking at Proqio. So I think for us, satellites is also something super interesting. And even for our viewers, if we're looking at this, remote sensing is going to become one of the most important ways to monitor assets globally, because you need that overall picture and you need to understand it from a perspective that you don't really get with traditional sensing. And the combination of all types of data is what's key. So, moving on from that, I think we mentioned Proqio a little, and what are your thoughts on platforms like Proqio and even like platforms like wireless data logging and platforms like People Radar? Really, how are they really helping mine owners, tailing dam owners, even dam
Right.
owners or civil infrastructure people? Yeah,
Well, yeah, there's a little irony there, right? In that our
yeah,
companies call asset assurance monitoring, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. So
yeah,
the user side of that is I need to see it, and I need
yeah,
to see it everywhere I work, and I need to see it
yeah,
when I want to see it, how I want to see it. I need reports more so sometimes than just the serial data because of time constraints and workloads, and also limited staff at the assessment level. For consultants, for practitioners, having a platform that is affordable, it doesn't have some 1980s based licensing scheme behind it. This is a challenge, and we've tried, well, not everything, but almost, because we've had to, because we don't do that. We're not coders at the platform scale. We don't design those environments, but we sure need them. And we've been a part of different ones that were built for specific reasons. And we'd always come back with, well, could you add this? Could you do this? I want it to be like this. Oh, yeah, we can do that. We can do that. But priorities changed. And their focus was either LiDAR, which is getting, millions of data points from all different acquisitions and trying to catalog those and manipulate those in a 3D environment. When we went to them and we had our, few hundred K of, GeoTIFF or KML data, they were like, well, that's like too small. Like,
yeah,
what do we do with that? And we said, well, this is all we need. So I think what we found that's really exciting for us is we found the Proqio environment, I would like to call, at least for us. It appears to be an environment. Some of the components we probably would never use, but we don't have to if we don't need them, right? And I think where we see real value is growing what we can use into that environment, and then seeing those visualizations, being able to limit those, being able to craft reports specifically to the outputs. We're quite excited to get as much of our data for our current customers in there. We've told them about this. We've shown them different opportunities that are out there, like Felt, GNext, even Google Earth. All these are kind of static. I can get so far. I can add that, but I can't add this. I don't have a timeline. I don't have a time series. And, what we found so far with the Proqio team is they're always ready to listen. They're ready to develop and to customize, and then to make an affordable, accessible platform to bring in IoT if it's from another source. And if they need to bring in that, they can. But if they want a visualization tool for our products or others, even differential ortho imagery, right? Just a series of satellite shots. Google Earth is just not suitable for this, and it's decades old. So we're
Yeah.
talking about being current, being modern, if you will, but also being future engaged, because we can craft that environment to deliver what our clients need.
Yep. I think I loved how you ended it, being modern and being future engaged, and that's what through this podcast we're trying to transform monitoring and geotech. So let's do two quick rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So I think I'm gonna skip the one where I was gonna ask you about the advancement in remote sensing technologies because you've talked a lot about those. So I think you talked a bit about your journey at IDS and Ground Probe, and I think it's really inspiring how you took two international companies and made them, with the teams there, of course, a mainstay in the US market. So do you want to briefly talk about that in like a minute or two and what your highlights were?
Well, sure. I mean, it was a lot of hours in a lot of funny places, with sometimes funny people, but devoted to success. And it took hours and hours of making mistakes, adjustments, adapting technologies that were, almost virgin, but very new in environments that are not forgiving. I've seen minus 57 near the Arctic Circle at Divik, right? I've seen the mass scale of the environment in China in coal mines, gold mines, copper mines, all different environments, civil sites where you can't even get there except to walk, or helicopter, right? We brought radars in on helicopters on pads that were crafted by the National Forest Service to look at a slope. So we were creating a work practice that didn't exist, and it was amazing. It was thousands of miles traveled, hours in airports behind the wheel. But when you got on site and that data was there, you were saving lives, you were assuring um, access through a road network or a rail network, or in emphasizing how production, could continue during a failure event at a mine site with the national regulator there. We graduated that technology into being a practice and a reference at the national level in the US, where now if you have an event or a slope issue, the federal regulator, MSHA, is going to ask, where's your radar? Right? I
Yeah.
mean, that was just unheard of for a decade. And now it's, where's your radar? Oh, you get a radar? Yes, let's evaluate. If you show us a way that you can continue mining with this data, we'll agree to that. And they open. We've seen mines with what are called K orders, work stoppage orders, starting mining again within 48 hours. That was unheard of, like until just maybe 5 or 10 years ago. So those are some of the exciting things that we were able to put into practice we had to have an instrument that was reliable, or we made it more reliable um, by its use in making adaptations. So that engineering process has to be flexible, and you have to deliver to clients no matter what. And that equation, yeah, that was very dynamic and very rewarding for myself and others who were in that field. Very challenging and sometimes painful. We lost people in the course of that, where either the work, the schedule, the environments, affected people. And that's also something where um, all the time monitoring, all the time awareness allows people to relax, if you will,
Yeah.
right? You've got that assurance that things are okay, and your system is working. And so we developed that through those efforts at Ground Probe, at IDS, at Roytech, and with our partners, Campbell Scientific. I mean, partners in the sense the mines use these other technologies, the Geocon and CardioRite, others, even providers of mesh like GeoBrook and others like that. It became like a family, um, with a lot of rewards. I mean, people trust each other, and that trust through work, that's something special. And that's what we try to share with others. That's pretty unique, and that it creates benefits for everyone. And in the end, that comes back to being safe, doing the right thing, um, being innovative, and pushing the envelope, and probably being unpopular or worse at some times. But in the end, people appreciating that you're there with them, for them. And I think that's what's allowed the business to mature into a monitoring practice. And there's a lot of work to do, which, as
Yep.
we've talked, we're going to do that together. And we're excited to do that
Exactly.
globally. Globally,
Yep.
that opportunity is massive in Africa, throughout Asia, South America, Central America. These kind of partnerships and relationships are very rare, right? They come from
Yeah.
very vertical relationships, and putting that decision making capability in the local operators' hands, it's going to be exciting.
Yep. And I think you've summed it up beautifully. And the whole journey is what brings different communities, different technologies, pushing the boundaries, thinking different, and really saving lives, saving assets, and monitoring. And
Asset
I
assurance.
think that's about the asset assurance. Yeah. And I think, no, again, like we have to do it as teams, we have to do it together, and we have to have a great journey ahead in the monitoring and civil engineering field.
Yeah, I mean, we're
Yeah.
always looking for allies because the mission is massive globally. The need in civil in the US, we're just barely scratching the surface of, well, climate is an issue everywhere. And as I was saying, we've seen these change seasons. I like to refer to as, we see real seasonality in near the Arctic. That's different now than it was even 5-10 years ago. Here in the Midwest US, it's different. Out west is different. Parts of Africa that, I mean, I spent 12 years in different parts of Africa. Those subtle changes across seasons are impacting, mining operations. They're impacting infrastructure. So it is a circle, not to sound silly, the circle of life, if you will, but the circle of monitoring. I think, as the earth, I say often, like one earth, like we're all here on one place. We need to make this work. We need to make it secure. We need to make it accessible, and we need to manage things we can't. And we've never managed nature well, right?
Yeah.
It always, it's been fighting us since the beginning of time, and we can't beat it, but we need to join it, and we need to be really aware of it. And that is requiring all the time monitoring.
Yep. I like that part. And I think we have to take into consideration changing environments, changing ground movements, changing conditions on site, but also in communities and in environments, and in the way we're developing as humans, and in the way technology is developing. A year ago, we didn't know how ChatGPT would spark all this AI buzz into the world, even though machine learning on iPhones and on your devices has been there for decades. But a tool
That's
that
right.
becomes easy and accessible to all, like ChatGPT, sparks a competition buzz in the valley. So I think tools like that, tools like Proqio, tools like Radar that became regulation by the federal agencies, tools like instrumentation, tools like satellite in the future will really, really help us make the difference that we need to make. So my last question is, you've been in the mining industry for a long time. And at SME, when we were interviewed together, we cracked a joke that we have like a 40-year age gap. So
Yeah, we
there's a
do.
lot of young people out there who could be like, what's the mining industry about? What's the tailing industry about? What's your advice to them? What any words of inspiration to get them on? Maybe this episode might spark some interest. Hopefully, it inspires young engineers to get into the mining field. So, what's your advice? What's your take?
Sure. Well, we encourage opportunity, and when I was younger, I was a journalist for many years, and mining wasn't a real popular topic, and the environmental aspect was always at the forefront. So it was easy to be anti-mining, and this is an ongoing challenge in the mining community. Is how to change this perception, and the fact is that it's not unsafe. It's highly, I wouldn't say regulated, but managed to the benefit of safety for the workers in most operations. There are some, especially in the artisanal mining areas of Asia, Africa, Central America, South America. I mean, those are different challenges, but there's a ton of opportunity. We need younger folks. We there is 40 years difference between you and myself, and we're a lot alike, but there's 40 years there that you can't just make up. It works. It's experience, it's struggles, it's success, and it's being personally able through good pay, good benefits, good education, good opportunities, and it's endless because mining won't stop. I mean, since the beginning of time, after fire, probably came mining, um,
Yeah,
taking some part of the earth and making it, usable for us, or that would provide something that we needed. So that's going to be ongoing. Now we're looking how to make what we have here viable in other worlds. It has to come from mining, and we need uh, people who have passion and interest. Curiosity is
yeah.
huge. I'm often asked, like, you're a journalist, like, what do you know about mining? Well, I didn't know a whole lot, but now I know quite a bit, right? Because I was curious. And when you show that and are professional, the folks out there working, they share because they themselves probably came from somewhere else, or they've
Yeah,
been in the sector for so long, they're ready to share that experience. So I found it to be a very giving and taking community. We probably wouldn't meet folks like yourself or like your family business and others if we weren't in that community.
yeah,
So whatever you can take in school, from high school, we're looking at helping in Nevada through the new Center of Mining that McKay School of Earth Resources and Sciences, I think it's its correct name. I could be a little off there. And Great Basin College is putting together at the high school level. So they're taking seniors
wow,
who can start getting like geomatics or instrumentation type of certificates in high school, getting then a 2-year degree, getting a four. There's a path, and that's important.
yeah,
Is that in mining, no matter you don't know anything today, that body that you present there, that curiosity and work ethic, it can take you wherever you want to go. That is for sure. I've seen that. And I think that's a message globally through all the different cultures and workforces. It's similar. The levels might not be the same, the path might be harder, but there's a need globally to keep the understanding, the education, and the output of value in the mining practice continuing to evolve and mature. So, people who like to stay inside all day, might not be for you. Maybe only in mine planning, but you're going to have to work on that mindset outside, right? And with the mining folks there to understand what you need to do. So there's divergent opportunities there. And I encourage my own sons and my daughter and my kids. I've said, I wouldn't have thought of this, right? At your age, I was not thinking that at all. But looking at this, you can be a writer and be in mining. You can be a first aid responder and be in mining. You can be a scientist, a geologist, almost any discipline. There's a position for you in the mining community. And so we try to share that. We're going to be trying to reinforce that as we know an operation, a physical location. We've been communicating with universities and colleges there for some time, and now we can go do something about it. And so we're pretty excited that we'll be a part of that, and that my son, my oldest one, is 20, so that's a lot of years also between. But he's got his whole career in front of him. Maybe it will be related to mining, maybe not. But there is opportunity.
Yeah, I think you summarized that really well, and it's up to young people, youngsters, and even people who want to move into mining to really see what they want to do. And if it's not in mining, really follow their passion, really follow what excites them, and contribute and pay our debt to society, because I think that's what's key, giving back to people and growing communities together. So, John, thank you so much for this interesting
Oh, thank you.
episode. I think it was the longest one we've had so far, which is pretty
Oh, no.
exciting. So, it's good
People
because
say
our
I
viewers
talk
can
too much
hear
all the
more.
time.
It's fine. And let's see. Hope to catch up with you soon. And for our viewers, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I think we gave you insights into mining that you might have not heard before. I think we talked about a few technologies that you might not have heard before, and that's the whole aim. Show the world of individuals who've really taken forward an industry and who have shown their passion and also got some cool technologies in to people, inspire them, and let's impact not only mining, but civil engineering, construction, environmental engineering, this whole field where geotech is involved together. So thank you so much.
Yeah, bring the groundbreakers community, make it grow.
Exactly. Yes.
Thanks,
Thank
Vivek.
you.
Take care.
Thank you.